Welcome to Culturenomics with Arjun. The show aims to unravel the layers of the fintech sector and the rapidly evolving tech startup ecosystem across the MENA region and beyond. I am your host Arjun, and I will be inviting founders, executives, investors, regulators, and other influential stakeholders to discuss and dissect the highs and lows of their own ventures and how they foresee the wider ecosystem evolve. Join us as we celebrate success and the spirit of risk-taking, the candid discussion that goes past the timid question and cautious answers. This show is produced in collaboration with Adyan, a reliable end-to-end payment solution that enables businesses to turn payments into a strategic growth driver. We're also brought to you by Lulu Financial Group, a global financial services provider headquartered in Abu Dhabi and operating in 11 countries. Finally, Culturenomics with Arjun Singh is brought to you by M2P Fintech, Asia's leading payment infrastructure company that enables businesses of any scale to embed financial products. Welcome to today's episode of Culturenomics with Arjun Singh. I'm your host, Arjun, and I'm joined by who I call the original fintech leader in the Middle East, and she also happens to be a woman. Not that that's a big deal for me because I'm big on gender equality, trying to bring up two young girls, but it is worth mentioning that she broke through barriers, which I guess today we talk about more often, more often now than we did in the past. Her venture is called Souqalmal. I think most of you, at least in the Middle East region, will be familiar with it. So with that, I'd like to welcome Ambareen.
Hello. Well, thank you for having me.
Pleasure. And I have this very corny sentence, which is, are you comfortable on the couch?
I am, but I did pick the other one and you asked me to move.
Trust me, the contrast on that
the yellow one.
the contrast on that shirt is way better than gray. So Ambareen, we have 25 minutes. We want to dive straight in. I'm going to ask a question which is front of mind for most startups, fintech or otherwise. There are all kinds of words you read on Twitter and LinkedIn and other social medias, which says the funding winter is here, right? What's your take on the situation? Is this something which is short term and it'll go away, or are we genuinely seeing an end of the cycle in terms of the fun and frolics we've had over the last few years, where funding was relatively easy?
Look, I think it's not short term, that's for sure. I think confidence of investors has gone all time low. We've already seen funding has dried up. Now, is there money? Yes, there is. Is there liquidity? Absolutely, there is. But the fact that the confidence has gone all time low is that money is not being deployed. Everybody's taking a step back, and it's quite normal, right? Because you've got so much in uncertainty, both geopolitically plus economically. Inflation is all-time high. The Feds are increasing the 50 basis points every other month. So the fact that there's so much uncertainty of where the world is going and what's going to happen politically and economically, the natural human behavior is, let's pull back, let's wait and see. So my take on this whole situation is, if you're raising funds at the moment, close now. If it's half of what you're supposed to raise and you've got committed half, close now. If you're looking at raising a big amount, put it into little pieces, into little boxes, and close small pieces as you go along. I think one of the big mistakes people do a lot during these kind of times is let's cut all costs, let's go bare minimum. You have to remember that we will get out of it. So going to complete bare minimum, you'll have to start all over again, and you will not be ready when the economy is back up. So the advice normally that comes into this kind of situation is be very careful where you spend your money, absolutely, but invest in product development and close funding as soon as possible, but also cut it into pieces.
No, I totally agree with you in the sense, and in some cases, if you have to take a haircut on your valuation, as long as your investor group is accepting it, and they should, take that haircut, because as you said, sustainability is more important than valuation.
And you know what, the whole thing about valuation, I've been doing this for 10 years now. Valuation is a short-term thing. It's now, the value of the company is now, but the actual value that you really want to know as a founder or somebody who's got stock options is your exit value. So you know how they say, I mean, since I was very young, they would say, take a step back to jump further. Yep. I think that's what it was like. One step back for two steps forward. It is pretty much this, right? It doesn't really change your life today to take a haircut on your valuation, but if that means cash in the bank, just get it done, right? Now, I've been extremely lucky. I've had incredible boards all around me, and at one point of time when the equity of the founder becomes a certain size, because the problem when you take a haircut valuation is your stake in the business decreases, you get diluted more. Very good boards in these kind of situations would normally come up with ESOP for the founder, or somehow everybody gets diluted, but let's keep the founder at a certain level. So that's an idea to bring up to the board. And normally, if you've got a very strong board, these are things that are normally done.
No, I think you agree with you. And I think just to add to that, I think a lot of the boards should have advised a lot of these startups to be a bit sensible in terms of the valuations they've taken in the early rounds. Because let's be honest, I think, history serves you a very clear lesson. If you get ahead of yourself, it does catch up with you, right? And it's happened in every part of the world, and there's enough evidence, right? I quote the evidence of what happened to a firm, right? A firm for me, let's take the sector BNPL, which gets a lot of flack these years. I think it's a fairly sensible business, right? It's got 5 out of your top 10 retailers sewn up. It's a publicly listed company. And a number of fintechs were actually seeing what was happening post-IPO to a number of these fintechs globally, but weren't willing to actually adhere and listen and see what was happening. We could have reflected a lot of this actually 12 months ago, in my opinion, because I think there were signs as early as July, August of last year that the global markets were becoming a little bit more prudent, at least at late stage, or large cap investments where people were taking a step back and saying, we're not going to put as much money at those lofty valuations, right? I don't want to name a company, but there's one particular global BNPL player been in the market since October last year trying to raise money, right? That's nearly a year. Right. So I think there is a bit of learning, and I think a lot of boards need to own up to that, whether or not they were giving sensible advice or not.
But I think to add on to that very quickly, It's super interesting what you just said, because remember, we're a very young ecosystem. So founders in this region are not necessarily second or third time founders.
Agree.
So you are learning as you go along. I mean, that's my, Souqalmal now we're pivoting into a whole new business. I almost feel it's my second venture, and I can tell you the difference and the confidence level in doing things the way you do. It takes you, decisions are made a lot faster than what I used to make them 8 years ago.
Totally. It's like having a second child, right?
Child, I'm not sure, but I've had 2 of them already, and they're extremely hard work. But what I'm trying to say to this is I think boards have an incredibly important role to play, and we don't realize this. I'm not even sure the boards realize it. I've been really lucky to have a really good one. But my shout out to all the boards there is take care of those portfolio companies, because most of them are first time founders.
And that's my point. So I'm actually having a go at the boards. I'm not having a go at the founders.
Oh, I'm not having a go at anyone. I think we're all growing together. Even boards, a lot of them are the first time board members, but I think I do believe they see so many of it. And I think part of a role of a board is to also see what's going on regionally and globally.
Yeah.
And reach out. I mean, one of our investors, Shane, from Shuruk Partners, Mahmoud and Shane, they've constantly been on the mark in terms of what's going on regionally, and they would send emails to all the portfolio companies. Listen, this is our advice in the coming 6 months or 12 months, and I've always very much appreciated this.
And I think that's good. So I think the lesson here for all startups is, as you're constituting your board and your advisory board, think hard in terms of what are these people bringing to the table, and are they able to bring that context which is beyond the region, because the region is not immune, right, to what happens in the world, right? Fine, people in the West might have got a cold and we're only sneezing right now, but we're not immune. And nor are the small businesses compared to the large businesses, because it is the trickle down effect and which will impact, right? As the big VCs stop investing, the ones who play in the middle round then stop pulling back, and then the small ones do. Because at the end of the day, all of them are looking to exit to the next level up. In any case, it's good to hear. So we agree with the fact that this is going to get, unfortunately, a lot worse than it'll get better. If you have the opportunity to, I guess, close right now, do it. If it means taking a bit of a haircut, consider it. And you can be creative in the way that, founders can be kept motivated and focused and so on and so forth. So let's kind of sort of switch gear a little bit, come closer to home. and talk specifically in the world of InsureTech, or at least where you initially focused with Souqalmal. Why has InsureTech, I guess, and yeah, a lot of people say InsureTech's taken time globally to take off. Yes, I agree with you. But particularly in the region, we have really not seen much action. Maybe in the last sort of 18 months to 2 years, we're starting to see some InsureTech. What's your reading of the situation? Why hasn't InsureTech sort of grown at the same rate or close to the same rate as the wider fintech sector?
Listen, I think the insurance industry as a whole is extremely archaic in the region. We're still quite far away. If you look at how a policy of a motor insurance is calculated, it's still a percentage of the car value.
Yeah.
We haven't even gone down the path of behavior, risk premium. We are extremely late in the game. So when InsureTech to come in and disrupt all of this, there's a couple of things in the ecosystem that you need to have in place. One is regulations. We're extremely far when it comes to regulations, extremely far. Getting there, but it's extremely slow. Two is the ecosystem itself. The insurance industry at the moment are probably at one of the lowest profitability from a motor insurance retail business perspective. And there's a whole lot of consolidation happening in the industry. So when you have consolidation, lack of regulation, the ecosystem is not being ready, it's not very much a ripe industry for an InsureTech to come through, because it's a bit like the fintech companies as well. If you want to be an InsureTech, there's a whole lot of the back end is still an issue. Somebody has to underwrite. These are industries that the InsureTech comes in as a front layer versus the whole vertical. And when you're still dependent on insurance company with very old ecosystem, with still risk averseness, with still ways of calculating premiums that are still archaic, it's kind of difficult to disrupt them immediately unless the regulations come out and make it extremely easy and cheap to set up a broker or an InsureTech to get the regulatory approvals. Take over 12 months, and it costs a lot of money to do so. So I think the market is not ripe, and the regulations coming through are still not at the level that it should be. Where it is globally, that's taken a long time, I agree. But I think we could potentially have done better from an InsureTech perspective.
And so that begs the question. When you set up Souqalmal, or the original genesis of Souqalmal, what was the thinking at that stage? And talk to us about the journey. It's been a decade, if not longer, right?
It's been a decade. I was on maternity leave with my first baby.
That's when you incubated the idea?
Yeah, well.
Okay, there you go.
I was like, I get 2 kids in one go, yeah. It's been a decade. It's been 10 years ago. And I remember very well, I landed in Dubai in 2008. Okay. And because I'd launched the GE Money Bank online in the UK, I worked very closely with Money Supermarket. Money Supermarket is the online price comparison site, which, by the way, over 20 years, the business model has still not changed.
Yes. I haven't used it recently.
Not once, right?
But I've heard that.
All the competitors has not changed business model. I don't know many companies, especially from a tech perspective, that doesn't change business model as they go along, but they haven't changed. So they were my acquisition channel at GE Money. So when I landed in Dubai, Citibank comes up, or maybe I should be saying the bank name. A bank comes to me and say, here's your credit card, here's your bank account. It was the same bank that Bain & Company was using at the time. And I was shocked because I come from a culture of comparison, right? In the UK, and then before that was Australia. You don't go to insurance companies or banks directly. You go through comparison site. So I asked the sales guy, and I said, well, what are the options? They're like, well, good luck in calling everybody and call me when you're ready. Truly enough, there was nothing. But then I was with 2 years with Bain, 2 years with MasterCard. It was 16-hour days. It was all over the place. As you would know, in consulting, you travel quite a lot. 4 years later, after 2 years with Bain, 2 years with MasterCard, I go on maternity leave and I start looking if there was anybody who started the idea, and nobody had 4 years later. So I decided, why not? But then I thought maybe there's a reason that there's no comparison site. But then there were, 50 different banks at the time. There's been quite a fair bit of consolidation by now. But at the time, there were 250 credit cards, 450 different loans. And it was impossible. There was no transparency. But what really got me going was when I took a car loan with one of the major banks here, and my rate, what I calculated as my repayment, was less than what they were charging me every month. And it took me 3 months all the way to the international branch of this particular bank to find out why my calculations was less. And I kept telling them, Excel doesn't lie. This is my repayment. I'm kind of financially savvy. None of them here could understand, Madam, this is the system. The system tells me this is how much you're supposed to pay. Anyway, having gone through this and 3 months of fighting with that particular bank saying, I don't understand why I'm paying more, I realized I was paying a flat rate, not a reducing rate, which means the same rate on the amount I borrowed, even if it was 5 years ago, not on a reducing rate. So when that happened, and at the same time I was thinking of Souqalmal, I started the comparison side, but the whole financial education and the core part of the business was born from this mistake of this particular bank and my frustration. And I thought, if I am financially savvy and I didn't get that, I don't know what else happening around in the region and in the country for that matter. So that's how the whole content piece and the whole financial education, which is the core of the business, started. So we did this for 3 years, grew around 300% year on year. And then 2016, the economic crisis hit. Banks literally turned off the marketing taps overnight. At the same time, though, the insurance industry and the insurance market, Zurich and AIG, or it was Zurich and one other company, I'm not sure if it is, but one of the two of the major insurance providers had left the motor insurance business because they had lost a lot of money. There was a massive price war. Profitability was all-time low. Nobody wanted to hear about a comparison site in the insurance industry. And a natural move of a comparison site from banking is into insurance. And that's where most of them make their money in the UK anyway. So 2016, the insurance industry became a bit better, more profitable. So then they wanted to acquire more customers, and that's when they started knocking at our doors. And that's how we launched the insurance aggregator. At the same time, the banking aggregator, though, was kind of falling apart just because there was no more marketing budgets from the different banks. And we did that, and that business grew 7 years until the regulations came out a year and a half ago, which actually entails that if you don't have a broker license, if you're not a regulated entity, you can't actually do any aggregator model anymore. So there was a whole level of regulations that came through specifically for online selling of insurance. So you're allowed to market the product, but you can't close the product, which meant you could spend all your money on marketing, but the actual closure of the particular insurance policy had to be done by a broker, and we weren't allowed to even use our name once the lead was actually passed through.
Wow.
So from a business model perspective, it didn't make any sense anymore because the business had to move into a lead generation model. So as we were building this and we're looking at, well, what are we doing? We also realized our financial education piece was very critical, and then COVID hit. When COVID hit, however, the insurance business grew 30%.
Yep.
Because everybody was going online. At the same time, CEOs started calling me saying, listen, we've just dropped salaries by 30-40%. And people are going mental. Productivity level has dropped.
Yep.
People are screaming because they can't pay their mortgage, they can't pay their rent, they can't pay school fees. Have we done something wrong? Actually, now we realize we looked at all the perks we give. We give a whole lot of perks, but we don't give any financial health.
Yep.
And that's how the Money Doctor program got kicked off. We built 10 modules, all the way from budgeting to investing. We launched it with Majid Al Futtaim, we launched it with Kareem, Emirates Catering. And that's when the whole financial education piece kind of took a life on its own.
And is that going to be a separate venture by itself?
It is just a different vertical, but it's still under the Souqalmal brand.
Souqalmal brand.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be a B2B to E model.
I'm not sure what that E is. I know B2B to C.
E is employee.
Huh. Good one. I'll take that on.
I think B2B to E is...
B2B is good. That's a whole new trend. Arjun, I think you've just started a whole new trend in the industry. A new term to use.
Let's bait in that. But unfortunately, I've used it so often already.
Okay.
Fund devices of being a consultant. Let's kind of switch gears. And I think I started where I kind of introduced you as sort of the original fintech leader who was, a woman, a lady. And a lot gets written about it, and correctly so, that, we don't have enough women fintech leaders or tech leaders, right? And, women-only startups get disproportionately underfunded versus, male or mixed funded. Now, there's a lot of history behind there, and I'm not going to be able to unpack it. I don't think in the next 15-20 minutes we can either. What I'm more interested to hear about is, since you were pioneering an effort, you're not only pioneering an effort which was I guess, a new sector by itself, but you were also pioneering it as sort of as a woman, right? So, in my opinion, and maybe I've got it wrong, the challenges are exponential that way, right? What's been your experience over the last sort of 10 to 12 years in this region? Now, I'm sure there are certain advantages you might have had if you're more familiar with this part of the world, but but what's your kind of advice at the same time? So your own experience, but from a perspective of, other women who are coming into this world. I'm a father of 2 daughters, so this actually plays in my mind every day because I want to create a world which is equal in opportunity for them, which sometimes I don't feel is true, right? At least that's my opinion. I'll rest the case. I'm not going to march down any streets holding banners that there needs to be greater equality.
So I have a two-sided opinion on this.
Give me both sides.
I think being a woman in the region, on the contrary, actually does help a lot.
Okay.
There's very few of us. You get a lot more attention. You get a lot more PR, and your company comes with it, right? If you're going to get attention, the company gets much more attention. There are awards that I've never heard of, a male entrepreneur award, but there
are female entrepreneur awards.
I've had the women entrepreneur awards, and I'm very grateful. Having said that, when I first started in the region, I didn't speak Arabic. I was the first woman at Bain & Company, by the way, when they first opened the business here. So I was the first ever woman employee in the Middle East at Bain & Company. And I think I was the first woman to go on maternity leave from MasterCard as well on that matter, now that I think about it. There's been a lot of firsts because, I came here in 2008. It was still very early days. I remember the first time I went to Saudi with Souqalmal. I was stuck in my hotel room for 3 days because there was no gym. I wasn't allowed to be out with the male colleagues. I couldn't go for the restaurants. And that was only 8 years ago. I am absolutely fascinated and incredibly pleased to see how things have changed. So incredible. We're talking about our daughters. I'm talking about 8 years of change. I go to Saudi Arabia without an abaya. I eat at restaurants with male colleagues. I can go to any hotel I want to. Even the feel of it. Sometimes the environment changes, but you still don't feel comfortable. Absolutely fantastic change. Mm-hmm. And I think what we have to remember is culturally this region, from a male and female perspective, has been tough, right? So the progress that's happened in the last 8 years is absolutely tremendous to me. So we're talking about your daughters. I have an 11-year-old. If in 8 years we've had that progress, I'm not even sure whether I'll worry about them in the next 20 years. The progress is here to stay, and I think there's been a lot more role models than there was when I first started. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I say thank you to people like yourself, to Forbes, to all the media out there who's made a big deal out of those women. I know there is no male entrepreneur award, but the fact that there was a female entrepreneur award has given and sensitized other women in the region going, maybe I could. 20 years ago, there were not that many role models. And when you grow up in a certain culture, in a certain place where there's no one like you who's done something, it's hard to imagine it, right? You can only project yourself once you see an example in front of you. So the way I think about it is both it was extremely hard, but less in the UAE level, but more on a Saudi level. But I think that's progressed immensely now. I think women have a lot easier path to get into entrepreneurship, to get into fintech, to get into, for that matter, any industry they want to be.
Such, yeah.
The other side of the story for me is, do we want to, as women? If I look at consulting firms I've been at and I see how many women make it to partners, did they not make it to partners because of equality, or did they not make it to partners because they decided they wanted other priorities in life?
Well, I couldn't answer that question.
But I have that question, right? Because I do feel we talk a lot about women opportunities. And I think we do have the opportunity. If you're talking about here, in the UAE specifically, I think the opportunities are here. I think it's a matter of whether you want to take it and whether you want to grab it. A lot of times it can be intimidating. All VCs are male. How do I go fundraise? I'm intimidated because I'm not used to it. That's where the role models come in. I think my hat's off to, there's a few VC fund now who are kind of having a part of the money only to female founders. And a lot of them, and they pitch to female. Now this is great for a start, but it cannot become a habit, because I think if you get tagged as a woman who raised funding, who got money because you were a woman, I'm not sure how good it's going to be for you in the future.
No, that's not what I'm trying to say. I think that, it should be the best person prevails, but is there equal opportunity being created for the best person?
Absolutely, but how are these being created is my question. A lot of times I wonder whether having the female-only route, is this a good idea or not? I don't have the answer to it, but I think it is until a certain point, because I have seen female-founded companies taking money from female-only funds, and they were tagged as the only reason they raised was because they were female.
And the next round, they're in trouble.
So which is why I think that it's a fine line, and we need to be extremely careful.
We do.
Into how we actually build the female entrepreneurship, and what we're causing as precedents, and whether it's going to come and backfire on us, right? I was in Davos a couple of years ago, and I remember hearing the most incredible New York Times discussion about whether you should have quotas for women on boards. It was absolutely fascinating, and I kept moving from one side to another because it was that strong from a debate perspective. But in summary, quota is great to sensitize people, but at some point it can also mean you're only on the board because you're a woman, and that backfires on the woman. So even if she did it by merit, prejudice is there. So I think I've got a two-sided coin, and I think that these two needs to be quite well balanced when we talk about women entrepreneurship and female awards and all of that. But having said that, I think, Forbes came out with the 5 top fintech leaders. I do believe it does give sensitization to other women around, and the more they see successful women, you'll see a range and a wave of new women coming on board and having that confidence level.
And that's important.
Which is why I believe the media and the PR aspect of female entrepreneurs is extremely important as well. Okay.
No, I agree with you. And just for the spirit of a dialogue, I sit, like you said, I wouldn't say the term on the fence, but I hear both sides of the argument. I see the merit and the demerit, right? I completely buy into the fact that there has to be a certain platform created so that women are given that sort of pedestal to be able to demonstrate their capability, right? And if that capability is not up there, it shouldn't just be rewarded because they are women, right? But I do think that there is a certain pedestal, a platform that needs to be created. Now, quotas are incredibly scary. I come from a part of the world where quotas were created for all sorts of things, and economically, I think it's come back to backfire, not only the general economy, but those individuals who were within those quotas, because as I said, prejudice kicks in.
Yeah.
I think this issue is not just a Middle East issue. I think this issue is a global issue. And even more so pronounced globally, because you would argue that there were less prejudices and there was less conservatism in terms of women in the workplace in a number of these other economies, which were fairly progressive. I think the world is moving towards a much more sort of equal society. I think the question you've raised, which is very interesting, and I don't have an answer, but I will dwell on it, is, in certain professions, are actually women proactively choosing not wanting to actually take the top spot, right? I hope that's not the case, because I think there's a lot of disservice then done further down, because you lose the role models, and especially if you come to consulting, right? It would be very healthy to actually have
so
that
let me
mix.
throw something at you here. Is equality for me is less about how many women are on boards or how many women run $100 million companies. Equality for me is freedom of choice. A woman should have the freedom to choose what she wants to be,
Totally agree.
how much money she wants to make, and who she wants to report to or she wants to be. And I think that is, for me, a lot more important than trying to push women towards be on boards and run this company.
I'm not pushing anybody.
Sorry, I didn't mean it that way, but I do take a step back sometimes and I say, are we putting too much pressure on women to achieve certain level of, maybe they don't want to, and that apply to male as well.
I think you're so correct. Unfortunately, we are creating this pressure. It might be very subconscious, but we are subconsciously creating pressure on the younger kids, as in I'll blame myself, right? As in, deep down, I want my daughters, to be kicking ass. I'll just say it as simple as that is.
So I love that comment. Is
Right.
what does that even mean?
Well, I just want them to make sure that they see the world as not purely as, dolls and Barbies, right? And
Have you given that to them when
no,
they were
I've
younger?
given everything to them. So my view is that as a responsibility as a father, and there we go, I'm getting quizzed now. We should be reversing here. I think my job as a parent is to just expose them to opportunities, right?
Absolutely.
And those opportunities could be anything from them wanting to starting, a hairdressing business can be $1 billion business, right? They don't have to all become engineers. Right. All I want to do is that I want them to believe that they can succeed in a world which sometimes is made to feel like that
They cannot.
That they cannot.
And I
right?
think I'm going to add one to this is I love what I do, and it's been a decade, and I still absolutely love what I do. I'll go back no matter how hard it was, and we've gone through turbulences that I'm not even going to mention.
No, you will, because that's my next question. So there we go.
But I absolutely love what I do, and I still do every single day. And I think that passion, and I've been hiring quite a bit lately. And I did say this to someone in the office today, and I said, I can teach you anything. I can teach you math. I can teach you algorithms. I can even teach you how to sell, right? But I cannot teach you passion for what you do.
Agreed.
And I only want to hire people with that passion, whatever it is for. I need you to have something inside that says you want to get up in the morning. You're not going to work.
Great. Will and passion is what you hire. Skill is what you can train, generally speaking. So that brings me to my next question. 10 years into a business, it's got to have highs and lows, right? Tell me, what are the takeaways for startups, founders, women or men alike, right? What is the playbook here, or what are the 5 mantras, or
So I'll give you a funny story on this. I was on a panel, I think 2 years in, and next to another founder who was 6 years in. Business was doing really well. 300% year-on-year growth. It was absolutely fantastic. We're going our Series A. We had done our angel round. We just finished Series A. We're already going on Series B. And I remember, like yourself, they asked, what are the challenges? It was tough, but we were growing and we're getting money into the business. And the 6-year-old founder next to me was saying, oh, we've gone through near-death experience. And I remember sitting there going, am I doing something wrong here? Like, why am I not?
Why haven't I had a near-death experience?
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't sound like my business at all. We're doing extremely well. Everything was incredibly positive. We were hiring. Little did I know, it does come at some point. So I think the mantra I would say is there will be highs and lows, no matter how amazing your business is, right? There are times, incredibly tough times. I've got founders from Pakistan who calls me once in a while and go, what am I doing? Why did I do this? I was a banker. I was totally fine. Why did I do this for? And then the next day going, oh my God, this is the best thing in the world. So it is. And I think founders are generally people who can take emotional ups and downs extremely well. Take by the
They're
core.
resilient.
And the resilience is probably the
Give me
only
a definition
word.
of resilience.
Being able to get shot down to the ground, having nose day in, day out, morning to night, and still not feel insecure about it, and still feel, you know what, I'll get a yes. At some point, a yes will come.
That's a long definition. We'll go to Webster with it.
I'll slip on it to another definition for you. But it's perseverance, right? It's the ability to adapt, be flexible. But there's one part I will add to it that I only learned later, is to be able to see way further than your nose a lot earlier than everybody else. And I think that ability to see what's coming and getting ready for what's coming is key to navigate the business through eventually an exit or profit-making business, wherever you want it to go.
Ambareen, it's funny. We've only met a couple of times, right? Feels like I've known you for a long, long time. It was a pleasure. Thanks for coming across. And I really, I didn't expect anything else but you being candid. So you lived up to my expectations that way. So thanks a lot for coming in. I wish you the really best. I wish you the best for Souqalmal in its new avatar or in its adapted avatar, right? And I come back with that resilience definition. I do have friends in Webster Webster's
will.
Dictionary.
Maybe we'll
And
set it up together.
We'll set it up together. Now, with that, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right, and I'm sure we'll meet again
sure.
in surroundings which are not as lit up as these ones.
Oh, we're sure we'll meet in different places, different countries, maybe.
Different
even.
countries. Right. I'd like to say thanks to Ambareen, who's the founder and CEO of Souqalmal. She started this business 10 years ago when I guess the word fintech was not even around in this part of the world. So she genuinely has pioneered fintech in the region. Wishing her the very best in the future. With that, I'll say goodbye till the next episode. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your candid and honest conversation.